Hi everyone, and welcome to another video of game development theory. Now today we're talking about heuristics. Now heuristics is the third basic game characteristic that we mentioned earlier but haven't really talked about much at all. And it's got possibly the most odd name out of the three. I've got a few definitions, so latch on to the one you like. So the first one is recognise usability principles, which doesn't really tell us much. It's kind of the most formal way of putting it across. There's easier ways of thinking about it. Rules of thumb that help a person play a game. So you might know the rules, but you might not know about every sort of intricate part to it, or sort of ease of playing sort of elements to it. So there's other things other than just the straight rules that you can work with. Probably even easier is a shortcut, so a technique for solving a problem in the game when classic methods are too slow. So you could, for example, you could pick up ammunition for a weapon in a shooting game only when you run out. But in reality, what you should be doing is going to grab all the ammunition you see on the way, so you don't get to the point where you have run out and then have a problem. That would make the game easier to play without that sort of extra stress. So a technique to make sure that things are progressing well. Okay, so heuristics, little extra helpful rules that you use to make everything go a bit more smoothly. So when people ask you the question, how do you play that game? Often they don't mean tell me every single rule. They often mean I've seen it enough, I understand possibly the basics of whichever game you're talking about. What they mean is, what are the other parts to it? So you know, someone might approach you about a sport, say rugby, and they've seen rugby players scrum together and run with the ball and pass backwards and things, but they might not understand more rules of thumb and effective ways of playing, so they might not understand certain formations, that type of thing. So those kind of additional helpful ways of thinking about playing are where heuristics come in. People talk about heuristics a lot when they talk about sport plays and sort of evaluating games afterwards and things, without realising they're talking about heuristics because they don't know the term. So there you go. Now you know the term and can sort of outline it as such. So an example is chess. Chess you can play by throwing a couple of pieces forward and doing your best for those two pieces, and then when they die you bring in reinforcements, so another couple of pieces come forward. But that's not a very effective way of playing chess. What you're going to do there is basically send your two or however many pieces onto a very, very small and suicidal mission. You're going to lose those pieces because, well, you're not meant to just have a couple of heroic pieces in chess. What you want to do is develop your pieces, so you have an entire battlefield that's slowly being put together by the movements you take, not just sending out a couple of pieces to try and do the job on their own, which they won't be able to do. So developing your pieces is an example of heuristics, which is smoother play, better play, more technical play. There are two types of heuristics you generally think about, certainly when in play. Positional heuristics is who is winning in the current state of play, what's going on, who's in the better situation. Okay, so that's understanding the rules of the game and the playing of the game, the heuristics of the game enough to understand who is actually in front. Or who is behind. You know, it's positional, so it's all relative. Then you get directional heuristics. Now, directional heuristics are a little bit different, just in the fact that they're the ones that tell you what strategy you want to use or follow. So they go together with positional heuristics, because of course if you know who's in front, who's behind, then you can form a strategy accordingly with directional heuristics. It all comes together. So, for example, if you were doing a race, 1 kilometre, Positional heuristics will tell you, who's where, who's in line with you, who's in front of you, who's behind you. Directional heuristics will tell you how to adapt your strategy to make sure that you are doing as best as you can. So if you're in the final sprint, there's still people in front of you, you're going to say, right, my directional heuristic, my strategy is to go as fast as humanly possible because I know that I've only got a short amount of time left and that's the best time to do it. However, if you were sort of towards the front, as towards the start of the race, you might consider the strategy is much more likely to be considering your endurance and going at a more stamina conserving pace. Okay, so heuristics. I've said it quite a few times now. You now know there's two different types, positional and directional, and you should have an idea of what heuristics are. Now, again, I've only given you a few examples because I want you to think about it yourself. So your tasks are: choose a competitive game that you're familiar with, so not one that you don't play or anything or you've heard of, one that you actually sort of have good knowledge of, and give an example of positional heuristics and directional heuristics within that game. Okay, so how do you know where people stand, like who's in front, who's behind, etc., and strategies within it. Extension task, I do recommend you try it. How does heuristics affect a random number guessing game? So, how does heuristics come into that situation? We'll talk about it next time to make sure that everyone's sort of on key, because I do like the extension tasks. They take a little bit more thinking, and a little situation like that hopefully will prove you either get it or you don't. Okay, if you have any questions about any of this, please do send me an email or anything at all. In fact, if you want to see anything particular from me, do send me an email, and I'm going to continue going with these. I'm also going to put up some stencil bits and pieces to be trying for next week as well. Okay, right, we'll continue with this next time. See you later.